Welcome back to Fantasy Football by Committee, powered by Flurry Sports. It can be tough to win a fantasy league on your own, but at FFBC, we will work together to bring home the hardware. Hosted by Zach Bruner and the rest of the Flurry Sports crew, we will give top-level analysis, answer your questions, and, well, go off on other tangents.
That was after I tried to get ChatGPT to admit that 9/11 was an inside job, but it stood firm. It gave quite a few solid points that it was true.
Welcome to Fantasy Football by Committee. The show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hello. Welcome back to Fantasy Football by Committee. I probably should have checked if my mic and everything's working here. Just sort of sat down and turned everything on, but it seems like it's all good. Let me know if it is not. But welcome back to Fantasy Football by Committee. Obviously, week 1 in the books. It is Tuesday. If you're listening to this after Tuesday, hopefully you can still get something from that. But we're talking about the waiver wire pickups today. And, most of our live shows on the Flurry Sports YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook channels are at night. And I think Tuesdays, it makes more sense to have this going during the day. We're currently recording this around 2:30 p.m. Central. Ideally, I think this might even be an earlier show than this. Just so the audio listeners, and if you are listening to the audio podcast on Spotify, Apple, or somewhere else, thank you very much. But I want to get this up in time for them to get something out of this as well. So please go subscribe to those audio podcasts as well. But yeah, this is going to be an earlier show, I think. Again, if you're watching this live, definitely jump in the chat, comment any questions you would like. But if you're watching this after the fact because you normally watch at night and you missed the show, please join the Fantasy Football by Committee Facebook group. You can just type in Fantasy Football by Committee on Google and it'll probably pop up. Otherwise, go to Facebook, Fantasy Football by Committee, and you can just ask all the questions you want there. You'll get answers from me. You'll get answers from other hosts that you've seen on the show. And you'll get answers from a lot of people in the chat. Thank you very much. Keep asking questions and stuff, and I'll get to them in a second. But in that Facebook group, you can answer or ask questions from everybody in the community. It'll be a great spot for you to just to get advice all year long and get all the best analysis so you can win your weekly matchups. But a lot of people on Twitch right now, so thank you very much. Little Cheeto, before we jump into, I'll go over the article on flurrysports.org about fantasy football waiver wire pickups. I'll give you some of my own, and I'll answer any questions you got. Cheeto wants to know, is Stevenson, Dalvin Cook, and Hopkins too much for Chubb? Sounds like your team's probably loaded. And so I think it depends on the rest of your team. It depends on how big, how big your league is and what your depth is like. I will say, in a vacuum, as long as you're not hurting everywhere else, I'm fine giving up that for Chubb. Truthfully, I think I would ask for more, just because, if they offered that to you, that means they're probably willing to give up more. So I would ask for more, but I would be willing to settle for that. I like Hopkins a lot. I'm lower on Stevenson than most people. And Dalvin Cook, he'll be good this year. He'll be fine this year, but he's not going to be Nick Chubb. So I would be willing to give up that. Stoof, thanks for joining us. Thank you very much for Googling our articles, TJ Hawkinson fantasy team names. Yeah, we got a bunch of fantasy team name articles on Flurry Sports. So, yeah, you'll see a lot of those on Google, and his choice was Hawked and Loaded. Love to see it. St. Louis fans, Mr. Discount, is anyone worth using your number 1 waiver priority on? That's interesting. So there's a lot of good pickups this week. I think it totally depends on, where you are at in terms of your team construction. However, my personal opinion is the wide receivers are probably the best pickups of the week. So if you're definitely hurting at wide receivers, if it's a 3 wide receiver league and you're worried about that 3rd wide receiver a little bit, I don't think Puka Nacua was a fluke. I will say that. But he does have a timer on him, obviously. So we can jump into him and then we'll sort of bop around to the other positions. But Puka Nacua in ESPN leagues this morning was owned in 2.8% of leagues. I expanded on him in an article specifically just for him on Flurry Sports, and he's owned in roughly 0% of sleeper fantasy leagues. So he's unowned, right? For what we're talking about. He's just unowned. He was compared to Cooper Kupp coming out of college, probably wrongfully so. But then he gets drafted to the Rams. He's like, okay, he's probably going to be in that Cooper Kupp role eventually. Sean McVay really likes him. We talked about him on the show. I think Sean McVay loves him as a project. I think he was going to be a good wide receiver eventually. I didn't think it was going to happen right away. I also didn't think Cooper Kupp was going to get hurt right away. So no Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua clearly fills that Cooper Kupp role. He played just as many passing down snaps as Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson, so you don't have to worry about that. And he led the team in targets, 15 targets. Let's see. Let me bring up my article. I have all this stuff. I know he finished as wide receiver 9 for the week. 15 targets, 10 receptions, 119 yards. Like, do I think he's Cooper Kupp? No. Do I think his role is a fluke? No. I think he's going to continue to be probably the target leader without Cooper Kupp there. Cooper Kupp now is on IR with a hamstring injury. He is slated to miss at least the first 4 weeks. That hamstring injury is weird, though. Like, hamstring injuries suck, obviously. They kept talking about his, there's something wrong with his body, the way it's built, the way something is operating in his body, in his leg, where this is going to be a continued issue. We talked about this. They kept saying this is a serious thing. They're worried about re-injury. They're worried about all this happening. He has a setback. He goes to Minnesota to see a specialist. They kept saying he was day-to-day. We told you here on the show that's complete bullshit. Like, there's no way he's day-to-day and he's seeing a specialist out of state. Like, there's just no way that was the case. And then he gets put on IR, missing 4 weeks. I'm not convinced this is a 4-week thing. Like, I think the Rams are hoping it's a 4-week thing, but there's a re-injury risk, obviously. And, he hasn't necessarily been the healthiest guy anyway. So I think Cooper Kupp could miss more time. If Cooper Kupp's out, I think Puka Nacua was at least a wide receiver 3. So I think you can use your top priority on him. I think he's going to be a target monster. When Kupp comes back, I think Nacua can outperform Tutu Atwell and fill in that role as well. So I do think there's a chance that both Kupp and Puka are fantasy relevant next to each other. Again, at that point, is Puka Nacua anything more than a wide receiver 4? Probably not. But, I will take a wide receiver 4 with upside any day of the week. So I think he's probably my top priority. Now, the other wide receiver, Hunter, mentioned in our best fantasy football waiver wire pickups article on flurrysports.org, is a wide receiver I've talked about a ton. Obviously, Packer insider and host of the Lombardi Sweep podcast. So I know a lot about Romeo Doubs. I've talked in nauseum about Romeo Doubs. I wrote a further explanation article about why Romeo Doubs is a fantasy pickup this week. So go check that out. He is owned in 40% of sleeper leagues, only around 19% of ESPN leagues. Now, prior to everything happening, and I'm talking injuries, I'm talking training camp, I'm talking preseason. Prior to any of that, I was saying Romeo Doubs has a very good chemistry with Jordan Love, probably the best out of the wide receivers. I think he's the most skilled wide receiver on the roster, and I think he could finish as wide receiver 1. Then all the injuries happen. Well, actually, then preseason games happen. Christian Watson does absolutely nothing. He looks non-existent. Then injuries happen. Both him and Watson go down with hamstring injuries. Romeo Doubs battling through the hamstring injury. Christian Watson not playing at all, which, again, further development of the chemistry between Love and Romeo Doubs as well. So Doubs only played about half of the snaps yesterday or Sunday now. He played 2/3 of the passing down snaps. He didn't have amazing stats by any means. He finished as wide receiver 13 because he caught 2 touchdowns. I don't believe in Jordan Love's arm. I don't believe in the Packers offense as a whole. However, I think Dobbs is clearly the wide receiver 1 to own in Green Bay, in my personal opinion, from everything I know about the two players. So, again, he is that wide receiver 3 or 4 with upside. And the only thing holding him back, minus the hamstring injury, which he's fighting through, he'll see more snaps as he gets healthier. Like, it's all tied to Jordan Love. If Jordan Love looks fine, if he plays fine, then I think Dobbs is going to be pretty good. I think he's going to be a red zone monster, as we saw, even with an injured hamstring. So if you're looking for a wide receiver, if you're in a 3 wide receiver league and you're really struggling with that third spot, I don't think Romeo Dobbs is a fluke. In fact, I think he underperformed against the Bears. So, and because he played half the snaps. So I like him a lot. Cheeto wants to know, should I trade Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins for James Conner? That one I wouldn't do. 6-man league. Holy shit. So there's a lot of people available. No, I would not do that. I like James Conner to start the year. We've talked about this a lot. He feels like a sell high candidate for the Cardinals because I think the Cardinals are going to run him into the ground. He has showcased the ability to not stay healthy throughout his career. I think he's going to get the ball a ton over the first month and a half or so, and then I think he's going to break down. So, yeah. So I wouldn't be trading for him. And I think you could probably get more. I can only assume, value is only tied to perception, right? Is the value of a player is what people perceive them to be. It's where they drafted them. It's where they think they could go. With the Zach Wilson injury, in my opinion, I'm just thinking out loud here. I have nothing to judge this on based on how I would judge it, I suppose. I feel like Dalvin Cook's value went up. Wouldn't the Jets use a ton of running backs going forward, running the ball and giving Zach Wilson very easy outlets to get the ball out, especially if that offensive line is an issue? So I feel like Dalvin Cook's value goes up. And DeAndre Hopkins, I loved him going into the season. I love him even more after week 1. I think he's a massive part of the offense, and I think he looks great, personally. Ryan Tannehill obviously played like doo-doo. So getting better quarterback play, and that is only with Ryan Tannehill. Hopefully they don't switch to Malik Willis. I think Willis is fine, but, the stock of DeAndre Hopkins would go down. But yeah, right now, that trade would be trading for 2 players who I like going forward versus a player who I don't think he has a very long shelf life. And it's a 6-man league. What's your running backs right now? I mean, you said you have Ramondre Stevenson and Dalvin Cook. Those can't be the 2 you're starting, right? Maybe Stevenson. But let me know. 6-man league. I feel like your team has to be stacked. If it's not, then share your entire team. We'll figure this out. You have to have good players somewhere. And I don't think you need to be panicking about your running back 4 or something like that in a 6-man. So your team is Derrick Henry. Running back is Derrick Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, Dalvin Cook. Okay. I definitely see why you want to upgrade. So let me know, is it 3 wide receivers and a flex, 2 wide receivers and a flex? Let me know that. Let me know your wide receivers. It's hard to trade in a 6-man league because everybody feels good about their roster because everybody has good players. But I would assume a good Stevenson week is coming, and you could probably sell high. But I do like upgrading from Stevenson to a Nick Chubb to just trying to think of other running backs around there. Maybe Tony Pollard, if you could swing that. Hell, I don't mind going. I think most people would perceive this as a lateral move, but I don't mind going from Stevenson to Najee Harris. That might be a trade that you can do straight up, but that would be odd to do it straight up. You know what I mean? Maybe swing it where the person you're trading with thinks you are downgrading at running back to upgrade somewhere else, and you go running back, wide receiver, trade for a running back, wide receiver. If you're not following what I'm saying, let me know. But yeah, I'm going to keep talking through these positions. But that's wide receiver. So the two that Hunter highlighted in our fantasy football waiver wire pickup article on Flurry Sports, Romeo Doubs, Puka Nacua. I think Puka is the better ad right now. And I think both have long-term value as well. I'm going to jump up to quarterbacks. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers goes down. That sucks. Massive Aaron Rodgers fan in myself. And, I financially backed the Jets this year as well in multiple ways at the sports book. So interested to see how things turn out there. But you're dropping Aaron Rodgers. You're dropping... Let me bring up ownerships, actually, just to see which players you could theoretically drop. Okay, so I'm going to look at ESPN just because most people are on ESPN. I think you can base everything off of this relatively well. So Rodgers currently owned in 85% of leagues. Obviously, drop him. He's done for the season. I think you could... I don't think I would panic on him yet, but I think you could drop Russell Wilson, 67% owned. I think you can drop Kenny Pickett. He's 38% owned. I'd say pick up Brock Purdy. He's 24% owned. You can drop Bryce Young at 18% owned. I'm not picking up Jordan Love. I don't care. I'm not picking up Jimmy Garoppolo. I feel like he's going to get hurt soon. I don't think I'm picking up Sam Howell. Yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. If anyone has a quarterback question specifically, if you're watching live, drop it in chat. If you're listening or watching after the fact, go to the Fantasy Football by Committee Facebook group and ask me there. But the two that Hunter highlighted were Jared Goff, who, as of this morning, was owned in 48% of ESPN leagues. Obviously, pick him up for sure. And Jordan Love, and I understand wanting to pick him up. I don't think he'll be terrible. I don't think he'll be great. I think this literally could be his only 3-touchdown game of the season. So I'm not in it. I'm not into it. I'm not picking up Jordan Love yet. Cheeto says his wide receivers are Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins. Okay. You're not trading Garrett Wilson because his stock just went down without Aaron Rodgers, right? Ooh. Okay, this is going to sound crazy. This might be what I do, legitimately. I understand trading DeAndre Hopkins because he's probably not your starter. And Stoof is kind of on my line of thinking right now. Stoof also just asked 2-man league, do I trade Tyreek for Justin Jefferson? That would be insane if there's a 2-man league. But I don't hate trading Tyreek Hill, assuming you can get top dollar right now. Obviously, coming off of an insane performance. I'm not saying it's a fluke, but I'm saying his stock may never be higher the rest of the season than it is at this current moment. And if we're thinking of fantasy football like the stock market, we're trying to sell high, buy low. If you can trade Tyreek Hill and let's say Dalvin Cook or Tyreek Hill and Stevenson for an obvious running back one and still a very, very good wide receiver, I don't hate doing that. I don't hate it. And it's going to be tough. And you will see Tyreek Hill go off for your league mate at some point. Christian McCaffrey, maybe. It kind of depends on who has him, I would suppose. That would be tough just because Christian McCaffrey consensus number 1 running back entering the year. So you're saying the player that was drafted after him, after 1 week, you're trading for him. I think I would try to do Tyreek Hill and let's say Ramondre Stevenson for Nick Chubb and what's the type of wide receiver I'd go for? I would try to go for maybe a Chris Olave, a Devontae Smith, that sort of tier. If you could package the two together and do that, I don't hate that. If you're choosing between McCaffrey and Eckler, Cheeto, I think I would choose McCaffrey still. I think they're both right there, right? But I think I would choose McCaffrey still. A&J on YouTube asked, should I trade Justin Fields for Dalvin Cook, George Kittle, and Derek Carr? That's a big trade. One, it depends on who you would have to drop to take on those players. But I'm not hitting the panic button on Justin Fields, by the way. This feels so similar to last season where the Bears coaching staff are trying to make Justin Fields something that he's not. Last year, Justin Fields was horrendous for the first month of the season, and then they started letting him run. He led the team in rushing this week without calling a single rushing play for him. Everything was off script, and he looked uncomfortable in the second half. I thought he looked really good in the first half. I got shit for saying that, but I thought he looked really good. So I'm not hitting the panic button on Justin Fields. I think they're going to start letting him run after they suck for a few weeks. So you do kind of have to suffer through it a little bit, maybe. But yeah, I'm not panicking on him. Would I do that trade for Dalvin Cook, George Kittle, and Carr in a vacuum? Oh, he has, Jesus Christ. Do you have 4 people in your league? A&J has Patrick Mahomes, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs covered. Really? This feels like a joke. Okay, so number one, wow. Number one, I don't think you can make a bad decision because your team's stacked, but wow. So you would be trading. I wouldn't do that trade if you have Justin Fields. I'm not doing that trade because I'm guessing your team's loaded on the bench as well. And I don't want to be dropping players for fucking Derek Carr. Like, I don't want Derek Carr as my backup. If you have Patrick Mahomes, who cares? I understand wanting to move a backup quarterback of that caliber. Bench is Amari Cooper, Mike Williams, Damian Pierce, Rashad White, Odell Beckham, 8-man league. Yeah, I'm not doing that trade. I don't think I'm doing that trade for Dalvin Cook, George Kittle, Derek Carr. So you're saying Kittle would start for you. The other two wouldn't even start. And Kittle, because of his health, like if we, hindsight 2020, but let's just say at the end of the season, maybe there was half the weeks he was a better start than Tyler Higbee. I think Tyler Higbee is in an inflated state of fantasy production right now without Cooper Kupp. Like, I know last week wasn't amazing. I think he'll be better. And I think there's going to be better weeks coming from Justin Fields. So I think I would hold tight. And I think there's going to be a situation where you can sell high on those guys and get more. Josh in the flesh on YouTube. Smith just bent me over without protection. Sounds tough. Do I start Love over Geno? No. Or consider Geno. Lost me 2 in week 1. Don't start Jordan Love. Don't do it. Maybe this will be a freezing cold take. But tomorrow night we'll be live right here, 7 p.m. Central with the ranking show. I'm doing my rankings tonight. Those will be posted on flurrysports.org. They will be posted on Twitter at Fantasy Flurry, in our Facebook group, Fantasy Football by Committee. So you will see where exactly those guys are ranked. I haven't done those yet, so it's not me just plugging for the sake of plugging. That could be an interesting adult film title too. But yeah, I haven't done that yet. I'm going with Geno. Who do the Seahawks play this week? If anyone in the chat can beat me to it, go ahead. They play Detroit. Play Geno. Cheeto, Hill, and Dalvin Cook for CMC and Olave. I think I would do it. I think I would do it because I think you could start Olave or DeAndre Hopkins, play the matchup, and then you upgraded from Stevenson. And now Stevenson's your RB3, which you feel pretty good about. I think I would do it. If your heart's not in it, don't trade for the sake of trading. I think your team is still probably fine for right now. But I do think I would probably do that trade. Yeah. So check it out. See what they think, I suppose. Now back to the article. Best fantasy football waiver wire pickups on flurrysports.org by Hunter. Go give the article some love. He wrote a good article here. Running backs, he put, again, 2 players from each position. The 2 running backs he chose to feature are Tyler Allgeier and Kyren Williams, which warms my heart. I took a lot of hits on the shins for my defensive Kyren Williams, and he looked good in week 1, so I'm happy about that. But Tyler Allgeier, first off, people surprised, shouldn't be. He's the David Montgomery of the team, right? So, David Montgomery is to the Lions, Tyler Allgeier is to the Falcons, except Allgeier was a 1,000-yard rusher and is a second-year player. Like, he's going to see the ball. He was the short yardage guy. He got a couple of touchdowns, or 1 touchdown. I think he got 2, but I could be wrong. But he's a flex. Going forward, he's a flex. Like, I think he's going to be fine. He might be a touchdown-dependent flex. So if you have a Bijan Robinson, for sure pick him up. I think Cordell Patterson will be involved as well, not just as a running back, though. So I don't know how much he takes away from Tyler Allgeier. But yeah, I think he is a pickup. And Kyren Williams, like, the Rams are going to take a hot hand approach. Week 1 isn't necessarily indicative of what we will see every single week. But I will say, I think Kyren Williams is a better football player than Cam Akers. Kyren Williams won whatever that award is, where it's like the best dual threat in the nation or whatever. He won that in college. Like, he's a very good receiver as well. He's a good runner, relatively patient runner. So I think he's going to be fine. Again, how much value is a Los Angeles Rams running back going to have behind that offensive line? I don't think great. I think he's a flex play. I think you can pick him up. He's a flex play. The only time you're really going to be comfortable starting him, and maybe not even then, is if Cam Akers is a bitch and holds out again, or if he gets hurt. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at Kyren Williams. I like him. He's owned in 10% of ESPN leagues as of this morning, so I think you do need to check him out. I think he's a great bench stash. Hunter said that as well. He just said it's a wait and see thing. But yeah, do I think there's going to be consistency in this Rams backfield? Not a chance. I think Zach Evans is okay too, the rookie. I think he was a scratch in week 1. I'm not sure if he was hurt or a healthy scratch, but I think he factors in at some point too. So yeah, I'm a Los Angeles Rams running back owner in a dynasty league, and that's about it. I didn't get to choose it for this season. If you chose it for this season, I think it's on you at this point. Ralph over on Twitter, would you play Alexander Madison over Allgeier? And again, have done my rankings for this week. Those will be up tomorrow morning on flurrysports.org. We have a show right here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central, going over the rankings, so I will have a better answer then. But just to give you a very preliminary answer, I know Allgeier plays the Packers. The Vikings play the Eagles on Thursday night, so you do have to make a decision quicker than you would like. I think, boy, Eagles are legit. I think I'm playing Allgeier. I hate Thursday games too. I get it. And by the way, players do too. I think I'm playing Allgeier. I will say I'm going to be ranking Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson relatively high this week. The Packers really struggled to defend running backs as receivers, and they struggled to defend tight ends as well. The linebackers aren't exactly great in coverage, and the safeties are just about as good as you and me. So I think those two are going to have pretty good days. But I think there's going to be situations where Allgeier can fall in the end zone at the end of drives. I don't think the Packers' run defense is that great. So, yeah, he is my choice. I give him the slight edge, and it's truly just me trying to project the probability of either player falling in the end zone. Because I don't think either player gets massive yards this week. I just don't believe in the Vikings whatsoever. And I look at Philadelphia, and they got 20 defensive linemen that are all studs. So that's where I'm at. Tune in tomorrow, please, or check out the rankings on Flurry Sports to see where I actually rank those guys, but that's my preliminary guess of what I'll do. Since I'm on ESPN right now, just looking at the percentage owned of players that you could drop. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins done for the year, 85% owned, drop him. That boy ain't cut out for the NFL, in my opinion. That's just me. Jerick McKinnon's owned in 75% of leagues. I'm not dropping him, but that's really high. That's kind of crazy. Rashad Penny owned in 69%. Little odd. Deion Jackson owned in 37%. I think you can drop him if you would like to. He's going to have some weeks probably without Jonathan Taylor, but who cares? Damian Harris owned in 26%. Drop him immediately. Who else? Let's go to the next page here. Lesser owned guys, but yeah, Deontay Foreman owned in 15%. Based on what the Bears did and based on how everybody looked in that backfield, I'm fine dropping Deontay Foreman. And Hunter didn't write him up, so it's probably more of a deep league ad. But I loved what I saw from Roschon Johnson. Obviously, I loved him out of the draft if you were following us around then. He is the best all-around back in that backfield, and he looked like a strong fucking runner against the Packers as well. So it feels like only a matter of time before he is the majority leader in that backfield, in my opinion. This week, I'm not starting him. This week, it's probably tough against Tampa Bay, but that's where I'm at. I would prefer Roschon Johnson to Deontay Foreman right now. Chuba Hubbard owned 11%. Who cares? Drop him. Deuce Vaughn, 10%. Drop him. Yeah. Kareem Hunt owned in 6% of leagues. I don't think he gets picked up by Baltimore this week, but if Baltimore looks terrible and they can't run the football, maybe they add Kareem Hunt, who's owned in 6% of leagues, or Leonard Fournette, who's owned in 1.8. You never know. You never know. You're welcome, Ralph. Cheeto, I added Allgeier for Christian Watson. Thoughts? I like it. I don't think you need to hold on to Christian Watson. I think I probably would have. Obviously, you're in a small league, so it changes things a little bit. But I think I would have tried to trade Christian Watson. People still think he's amazing. And I don't. But I think you probably could have got something for him. Is this an addition in the trade? If you're saying this is an addition in the trade, I'm not trying to trade for Christian Watson. I will say that. Wilson on Twitch, would you trade Herbert and Breece Hall for Hurts and Javonte Williams? Yes. Yes, I think Javonte Williams' role will grow, and I prefer Hurts to Herbert. Oh, just a pickup for Cheeto. So you're adding Allgeier, you're dropping Christian Watson. Yes, I would do that, I think. Yes, I would do it. Just because I don't think you're starting either player, right? But if Bijan Robinson goes down, then all of a sudden Allgeier could vault into a value where you're trying to start him. And at what point would you start Christian Watson over those guys? Never. And if you do, you're going to get burnt. That's just the way fantasy football works. So, yes, I would do that. Back to the article. We talked about quarterbacks, talked about running backs, talked about wide receivers. We'll end on tight ends here, and maybe we'll do DST streamers a little bit. But tight end pickup, Sam Laporta, still owned in 34% of ESPN leagues. I don't get it. Pick him up. He is an every down guy. I think his role is going to grow. We saw how the Lions really hesitated to put their rookies out there in terms of Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jack Campbell. They all were sort of limited. Laporta wasn't really limited. So, 83% of snaps. It just shows how much they think of him, shows how ready he is, and it shows how much of a handle he has on that tight end, starting tight end position in the offense. I think he's great. He didn't have a super strong game, 8.9 PPR points, Hunter says, but Like he feels like a 4 to 6 catch guy every single week. And he, in college, forced, I believe, the most missed tackles of any tight end. And compared to the wide receivers, a shit ton as well. Like if they can get Sam Laporta the ball in open space, I think he can force a lot of missed tackles and get a bunch of yards, get some touchdowns, The issue with Sam Laporta in fantasy is not his usage between the 20s. It's in the red zone. The Lions really like to run the ball. Obviously, amazing offensive line. They can really pound the rock. They're going to run the ball. They're going to run it effectively. David Montgomery is a good short yardage runner. So what that means, most fantasy tight ends, most of their value comes from catching touchdowns. Most of those touchdowns are in the red zone. And if you're saying Laporta has a reduced chance to catch touchdowns in the red zone, that sucks. But I do think his catches, his yards, give him a stable floor, more of a stable floor than most fantasy tight ends. I just think his touchdown production is not going to be what we want it to be, which will keep him from being one of those top 5-6 guys. But I do think he's great. And then Hunter Henry, owned in 4% of ESPN leagues as of this morning. Hunter Henry is a massive part of the Patriots offense, and I think the Patriots offense is massively improved. Who to think it? They get an offensive coordinator in there to actually call plays instead of a defensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator trying to do it. Bill O'Brien turned that offense around. I thought they looked pretty good against the Eagles. And Hunter Henry will reap the benefits. 5 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. Again, he's that 4 to 6 catch guy, I think. Blur on YouTube asks, Jerry Jeudy for Waller PPR. His wide receivers are Diggs, Wilson, Debo, Christian Watson, Jeudy, and only have Higbee at tight end. Yeah, I would do that. I like that trade. Obviously, you're not really looking to start Jeudy over those guys. I don't love Debo, but I don't massively love Jeudy either. So I don't hate it. Yeah, if you can somehow get Debo, trade Debo for, Waller and something else in return that you like, I think I would prefer to do that. I think Jeudy has a higher upside than Debo Samuel does this season. And Christian Watson's just sort of there for you. But yeah, that's what I would do. I don't hate the trade. I don't hate it whatsoever. But yeah, those are our fantasy pickups. And at tight end, let me go back to ESPN here just to see who we can drop. I mean, hopefully Kelsey and Andrews rather play this week. That would be ideal. I think you can drop. I mean, shit. I don't think you need to own Dalton Kincaid. He's owned in 63% of leagues. I don't think I would drop him just because I think you could trade him. But I don't think you need to own him. You certainly don't need to own Gerald Everett, owned in 49% of leagues. The dude hasn't been productive ever next to Donald Parham. So don't think you need to own him. I don't think you need to own Puka Nacua at 48. You certainly don't need to own Juwan Johnson at 42%. I like Zach Ertz. He's only owned in 39%. Pick him up. Pick up Sam Laporta. Isaiah Likely. Or Greg Dulcich, by the way, doubtful. Drop him. Isaiah Likely is an issue because this is the week that you needed to start him. Like if anybody owned Isaiah Likely, this was the situation you were looking for to start him, and he was terrible. But the entire Baltimore offense was terrible, so I do think there's reason to think he'll be better as long as the Baltimore offense looks better. But he's certainly not a guy that you absolutely have to pick up, or don't pick him up. Not a guy you absolutely have to hang on to. And because of this performance, people are going to be slower to pick him up if Andrews is out again. So that's the good news, I suppose. Otherwise, Adam Troutman for Denver's should be the tight end one now. Not flocking to pick him up. If you're in a 16-team league, I think there's value there. If you play DFS, I think there's value there. Dawson Knox is owned in 13% of leagues. Drop him yesterday. Luke Musgrave owned in 8.5%. He's extremely athletic, and the Packers kind of need him. I thought his ball tracking ability on Sunday was sort of embarrassing, but he still finished with an okay stat line. So I think you can pick him up. Hunter Henry owned in 4%. Pick him up. What did Logan Thomas do? Really quick. 4 for 43, 8 targets. I think the tight end position in Washington is going to have value. So if Logan Thomas is healthy, I think there's value there. Play him in DFS, play him in a deep league. I think you can do that. If he gets hurt, it's going to be Cole Turner. I kind of like Cole Turner, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, that's that situation. And really quick, we'll just talk about a couple defenses here that are lesser owned that maybe I would go to. Let's talk about under 60% owned. That feels fair. Sort of a weird cutoff point because I wanted to say Cleveland, who's owned in 59.9% of leagues. So just under that. They play at Pittsburgh this week. Pittsburgh, under the control of Matt Canada, offensive coordinator, has been god awful. And it continued again in week 1. They played a good defense, but they were terrible. They lose Deontay Johnson on top of that. And the Browns looked much, much better under Jim Schwartz now that they actually got a defensive coordinator there. So I kind of like them this week, owned in 60%. So that means they're free in 40% of ESPN leagues at least. I think you should check that out. Who else? Cincinnati's worth a look because of how bad Baltimore looked. They're only owned in 25.7% of ESPN leagues. So I think you can look at them. Tampa Bay, owned in 9% of leagues. That defense is still good, and they play Chicago. So I think you could get away with that. Fucking Denver, man. Denver should be so much better than they are on defense. It's just Vance Joseph is an absolute doofus. I'm not ready to give it up yet. Their cornerback 2 is an issue, but I think they can still be one of the best defenses in the league if something gets figured out. They play at home against Washington this week, 7.7% owned currently. So I think that is definitely a good option for you. In DFS, I would imagine they are middle of the road at most this week. So I think they could be a nice value play as well. Anybody else? Indy plays Houston, but I don't really care. Houston plays Indy, but I don't really care. Chicago plays at Tampa. Chicago's defense should be better than they showed against Green Bay. This feels like a team that's going to be better on the road than at home, just because their home crowd was so fucking pathetic, at least on Sunday. So at Tampa, if you're looking for a very, very low owned, risky play, I think Chicago at 2% ownership could be bottom of the barrel in terms of pricing on DFS. So that's a spot I don't hate either. I don't hate it. Final questions, get them in. I see Snake's comment here before I answer your question. This is just the last thing I'll say before we do the final questions here. Join Fantasy Football by Committee Facebook group. There you can ask questions whenever you want. And if you're an up-and-coming fantasy analyst, you want to be a fantasy analyst, that's a good spot for you as well because you can answer people's questions as well. So very, very good spot. And honestly, if you're a fantasy analyst and you want to share your articles and stuff like that you write, you can share them in there as well. I'm the owner of the group. I'm saying it's cool. So go do that. I just want to build a really cool fantasy community there where we all win, unless you're playing against me, right? We just help each other out. One of the best fantasy communities on the internet, up and coming. So join Fantasy Football by Committee on Facebook. Subscribe wherever you are watching or listening to this. If you're watching live right now, just know this is an audio podcast after the fact as well on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Audible, iHeart, a few others. So subscribe to us there and rate us 5 stars. It really, really helps us, especially early in the season. And if you're watching this video after the fact on YouTube, comment there as well. Subscribe, like, and leave comments with questions. I'll answer them. I will say to go join the Fantasy Football by Committee Facebook group, but the more comments we get on videos as well, the more they will be promoted by YouTube, and the better and bigger we will grow. But Snags, are we dropping Marquise Brown for Gainwell or Bigby? I don't hate it. Like, I don't think Marquise Brown's that good. So I would probably drop him for Gainwell first. But I like both players. I think Bigby's role is going to grow as the season goes along. He's obviously the short yardage guy, so probably the guy to pick up touchdowns. And his role's big if ETN goes down. But I would prefer Gainwell as of right now. I don't think you need to panic drop Marquise Brown. For other people who may be listening and wondering, I don't think panic drop him. But if you have a good option, like Gainwell or Bigby, I think you can do it. Even if you're looking at Puka Nacua, I think I would drop Marquise Brown for Puka. I'd probably drop him for Romeo Doubs as well. Just because how good is the Arizona offense going to be? How good is the Arizona passing offense going to be? Spoiler alert, not very good. They played Washington. Like, this is a game they had a chance to steal because Washington's not very good. So I don't anticipate Arizona getting much better as the season goes along. Marquise Brown, not a panic drop, not a must drop, but I don't think you're ever going to feel good about starting him. So if that's the case, cut ties. But that's it for today. That's it for today, I think. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central, we will be live right here again for the Fantasy Football Rankings Show. If you want to see my fantasy rankings before the show, they will be posted in the Fantasy Football by Committee Facebook group. They will be posted on flurrysports.org. And as always, they are included in the Fantasy Pros Consensus Expert Rankings or whatever the fuck they call those as well. So you'll be able to find them on Fantasy Pros as well. If you are in a league that does not have an award yet, go to trophysmack.com and use the promo code Flurry, FLURRY. And if you buy a trophy, you get a free championship ring. That is a value of like $60 or something. It's very cool. They got a deal with Mark Cuban on Shark Tank, the most customizable fantasy award business in the industry. You can get a championship belt so you're looking like a WWE superstar, but it says fantasy football on it. Really cool, customizable. They got trophies. They got championship rings. They got champ chains, kind of like that turnover chain from Miami. And they got magnetic wall art that's also fully customizable. I was playing around with it. I might actually order it. I did like a Dan Campbell Pokemon card. It looked kind of cool, so I might buy that. But those are awesome. And so use promo code Flurry, FLURRY. You get a discount. We get a little portion of it. So you support the show. Please do that. And subscribe. Until next time, we'll see you then. Goodbye.